This podcast contains our own personal views not associated with any organisation. Coronial contains descriptions of death inquests that may be graphic and disturbing to some listeners. Discretion is advised.
Welcome back to Coronial, everyone. I'm Alice.
I'm Emma.
And I'm Georgie.
So today I'm going to be telling you about the inquest into the death of Johann Offner. Johann was a professional actor and stunt performer, and in the months before his death, he competed in the TV show Australian Ninja Warrior and made it to the grand final.
I haven't even heard of that TV show.
Oh, really?
No.
Essentially an obstacle course, but like you need a lot of strength and agility and that sort of thing.
Think Gladiator?
I used to love that show as a kid.
It's basically Gladiator, but new version, right? New age Gladiator?
Yeah. He was the eldest child in his family and had a daughter.
And how old was he again? Didn't say?
Doesn't actually say.
Okay,
No,
sorry.
I think relatively young-ish.
Yeah.
In December 2016, the Australian band Bliss and Esso were organising a music video for their song Friend Like You.
Oh, I know this one. I read this one. Okay.
They employed a production company, and the company director was the film director for the video. A full-time employee of the company was the producer for the video. The film director created a storyline of the video, which was based on the journey of a $50 note, as it passed through different characters' lives, and this involved a few scenes needing stunt performers. One of these was a scene involving an underground poker game and an argument between the players. Mm-hmm. The film director contacted a stunt company and engaged a stunt coordinator to choreograph the stunts, find performers, and organise the performers during filming. The stunt coordinator recommended a number of stunt performers and 4 were employed: Johann and 3 Japanese-based stuntmen. This poker game scene was filmed at the Brooklyn Standard Bar in Brisbane City on the 23rd of January 2017. The plan was for the argument to happen and for one of the stuntmen to point a submachine gun at Johann, who would shoot the stuntman in the leg with a gun held under the table. Johann would then walk over to the stuntman and pistol whip him. Then another stuntman would shoot Johann in the chest with a sawn-off shotgun.
Oh, okay.
To act out the force of that shot to the chest, Johann would be wearing a jerk vest, which uses a jerk rope to pull him backwards.
Right.
So it looks like
he's being pulled.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
A licensed theatrical armourer was employed to provide the firearms for this scene. He brought a number of firearms to set, assigned the weapons to the stuntmen, and also loaded and unloaded the guns for them. At 1:46 p.m, the filming of the poker game scene started. The stunt coordinator removed the 12-gauge blank ammunition from the shotgun and showed it to Johann and another stuntman to show that it didn't have any shot inside. So shotgun ammunition have essentially tiny little
Pellets within them, right?
Yeah. So these ones didn't have any of those pellets in there.
Right, so it was the cartridge was being loaded in, but the cartridge was empty of any actual gunpowder ammunition.
I think it still had gunpowder because it needed to be...
Right, something to actually trigger it to leave the gun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I go into this a little bit later.
Okay. But essentially showing them that it's
not
a blank round.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, okay.
When the stunt coordinator called action, Johann raised the handgun in his left hand, ready to pistol whip. So they were filming this part of the scene.
Yeah.
The other stuntman then pulled both triggers on the shotgun, which was between 1.3 and 1.45 metres from Johann's chest. So they're in quite close range.
Yep. Sorry, are there 2 triggers on a shotgun?
On this shotgun, yes.
Okay.
The stunt coordinator and his assistant pulled the jerk rope so that Johann was pulled backwards. When Johann didn't get up from the ground, the other people around realised something was wrong and they rushed over to him.
And was he bleeding profusely everywhere?
No, actually. They saw 2 wounds in his chest with minimal blood.
Oh. Still more than 0, which
Yes.
is
Not ideal.
more than I was expecting if you've been shot with a blank round.
Yes, exactly. The stuntman who had pulled the trigger started CPR and the ambulance was called at 1:53 p.m. The paramedics arrived just after 2 p.m. and performed resuscitation for 23 minutes before Johann was declared deceased. The post-mortem was performed the next day and found 2 projectile wounds on the front left side of the chest. One wound was minor and did not contribute to death. The other wound actually penetrated the chest. So within the intercostal muscle, so the muscle that's between the ribs, there was a 19mm disc-like card wad, a 7cm by 4cm soggy brown wad material, and a piece of white fabric-like material.
Was that just the vest he was wearing that had been penetrated through?
No.
No, okay.
We'll get there.
Okay.
Bizarre. Okay.
In the area between the lungs, there was a 19mm green rounded plastic wad. From the inner chest area, they found 2 pieces of somewhat soggy dark brown material, and they mentioned there were fibre filler wads and a single 19mm card wad.
This is sounding much like something you would clean the barrel with.
Yeah, I was like,
Nope,
No?
not even
Okay.
what
that.
is in
Yep.
the barrel that
Yeah.
has been shot at this guy?
The wound was associated with a laceration of the heart caused by the transmitted force of the projectile.
Yeah.
This laceration caused there to be blood in the lungs and in the sac around the heart. The cause of death was listed as gunshot wound to the chest.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yep. Queensland Police Service attended the scene on the 23rd, just after 2 p.m. The forensics team conducted an investigation, aided by the extensive video footage of the incident, because they were filming at the time that this happened. It was decided that the investigation would be a joint one, with QPS and Workplace Health and Safety. The investigation took over 3 years to complete, partly because of delays related to COVID.
Yeah.
Right.
The armourer held licences since 2006 as a theatrical ordnance supplier and firearms dealer, as well as an armourer's licence. To obtain these licences, he had undergone a background check, a safety test to check safe handling of live firearms and ammunition, and had demonstrated his ability to manufacture, modify, and repair weapons. The armourer had worked with the stunt coordinator on previous projects, and they had a good working relationship. The production company didn't give the armourer any details about the filming other than that guns were needed. On the 21st of January, as was protocol, the armourer faxed a notification to the Alderley police station to advise that he would be using replica guns, but not an operable shotgun.
I disagree.
Yes. The police also disagreed.
Okay.
The firearms and ammunition that were provided on set that day were a 12-gauge side-by-side twin-trigger shortened shotgun, a replica submachine gun, and 2 9mm blank-fire self-loading pistols. The sawn-off shotgun that had fired the fatal shots had been hand-shortened by the armourer and was capable of firing live rounds.
So it is a shotgun.
It's a
Yes.
shotgun.
Yeah.
It's not a replica.
It's absolutely
It's a
sawn-off
sawn-off shotgun.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Weapons Act regulations states that all weapons supplied under a theatrical ordnance supplier's licence are to be blank fire or permanently inoperable. Therefore, this shotgun was not allowed to be used for theatrical productions since it could discharge a projectile.
Yeah.
As
Okay.
demonstrated.
Yes.
Yeah.
The 2 pistols were blank fire firearms in that the barrels were blocked and it was not possible to fire a projectile from them. They were specifically made for close proximity special effects.
So do they have some kind of special effect that actually makes it look like it's being shot, or is literally just holding
I
what
think
is a
because
real
that
gun?
one they were just...
Pistol whipping anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The submachine gun, being a replica, was not operable and could not be fired. The shotgun cartridges supplied by the armourer had been obtained by him about 12 months before the accident. This cartridge supplier was listed on the armourer's theatrical ordnance and dealer's licence from June 2015. So 2 types of shotgun shells were created for the armourer: smokeless, which had a blue shell, and black powder, which had a green shell. From the material found during Johann's post-mortem, it was determined that the blue shot shells had been loaded into the shotgun. The blue shell cartridges had a hard plastic and cloth wad in them to hold the ignition powder against the primers and create a blast effect to propel the shell forward down the barrel.
Okay.
So that's where all that material in his chest came from. It was actually in the shell.
And so the smoke ones or whatever did have more of a projectile, so they shouldn't have been at such a close range, or either way they shouldn't have
I
actually
think
been
either
shot
way
out.
they shouldn't have been used.
Or they should have been used at a individual.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
The cartridge supplier had no formal qualifications or licenses in the manufacturing of ammunition for supply to others. He was self-taught how to reload ammunition from years of dealing with firearms, off the internet,
Excellent.
through literature, and from his employer. He was not told by the armourer that the shotgun shells would be used to be discharged in an enclosed space or in a shotgun that was going to be aimed at a person.
Yeah, and I mean, is it really the person's responsibility who's making the shells in the first place?
He shouldn't have been supplying them
Yeah.
because he had no license to.
But even then, if he had been a licensed individual,
I think
do
if
you
that
have
was
a
the
duty
case,
of care to
It's
ask
tricky because
how it's being used?
It's like a high risk,
Activity, right?
but like, is it anyone's business?
If someone murdered someone with a gun,
Yep.
the bullet manufacturer doesn't get held accountable, right?
No.
Generally. But yes, obviously these blanks are not really blanks anyway,
Yeah,
so that's also a
exactly.
problem.
Yeah.
Yep. In a police interview 5 days after the accident, the armourer told police that he had told the stunt coordinator that a wad would come out of the shotgun when it was fired. The stunt coordinator denied this at the inquest and said that if he had known that, he wouldn't have filmed the scene.
Yeah, but also, like, you can say a wad's going to come out, but the armourer has been contracted for a scene that is not going to be harmful. So maybe
Exactly.
he even then interpreted, like, a wad's going to come out, but it's just going to, like, poof and fall, not, like, be a projectile that kills someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if it's been shot out of a gun,
Yeah, I mean,
it's
I
going to
get
be
that.
projected. It's
I
not
get
just
that
gonna-
that premise is silly, but that
Yeah.
may have been what he assumed because he had hired the armourer.
Yeah, you hired the armourer as the expert. The stunt coordinator thought that the shotgun was a weapon which would fire blanks and that there would be no projectile discharged. He did not request a test fire of the shotgun because that was up to the armourer, but there was a test fire of the 9mm pistols. I think essentially just to make sure, yeah, cool, nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
He believed the overall responsibility for firearm safety was with the armourer.
Absolutely. Because he said they basically weren't actually allowed to touch the guns until they're handed by the armourer.
Yeah,
Right.
but he still could have requested that they test fire them.
Oh, absolutely. But again, it was up to the armourer that the policy was the armourer did everything before
related.
anyone touched anything.
Yeah.
Even if, yes, you could ask them.
The armourer was asked by police whether he thought the material used for the shells was safe, and he said he thought they were.
Yeah.
He later told the cartridge supplier that he had used these on a minor production and that it was fine. He said it was the same situation, and he told the shooter to just aim to the side.
Right. So the last one was fine because the projectile didn't impact an
Correct.
individual.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And potentially it was a further distance as well.
Yeah.
At the time of the incident, the armourer had a terminal illness and was on opioid medication. So it's likely that his judgment was impaired at the time.
Yeah.
He passed away on the 5th of August 2017.
Yeah.
The workplace health and safety investigation found several potential breaches of duties and responsibilities on the part of the stunt coordinator, the film director, and the producer. However, because of the recklessness of the armourer, they could not be held responsible for the death of Johan.
Yeah, and I think that's a tough one, but they were expecting the armourer to be doing the job correctly, right?
Yeah,
that's
and like
right.
there's more they could have done in terms of safety and responsibilities, but in the end,
Yeah.
it was the armourer's fault.
Yeah.
Yeah. QPS came to the conclusion that any arguable breaches failed to be proved to a criminal standard of proof,
Yeah, okay.
so that everyone in that production company wasn't charged.
And ultimately, as you said, what's the point of pursuing criminal proceedings if the main person who they say is at fault isn't alive?
Yeah,
that's the
Exactly.
point.
Yeah.
Yep. The workplace health and safety investigation found quite a few failures. The failure to appoint a site safety officer with overall control of safety considerations. The failure to undertake dedicated firearm safety briefings. The failure to test fire the firearm to establish safe distances for the actors. The failure to realise aiming difficulties attached to firing from the hip, because that was what the stuntman was doing.
Yeah, right.
Was firing
True.
this sawn-off shotgun from the hip, and so
Yeah.
aiming is really difficult. And the failure to consider more costly but safer production options, such as computer enhancement or inoperable firearms.
Yeah. Which I think would be becoming much more normal practice now is to use
I would
computer
think so.
enhancement
Yeah.
because of the safety risk, right?
Yeah.
And this is not the only high-profile gunshot wound that has occurred.
No, it's feeling very Alec Baldwin-esque, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, I talk about that a little bit at the end. So the inquest didn't need to go into what happened, since everything was captured by the cameras on set.
Yeah.
The inquest instead looked into the adequacy of training and safety briefings provided to the cast and crew on production sets, consideration of the regulation and applicable standards of the use of firearms by which the entertainment, film and production industry operates in Queensland and Australia, and whether there are ways to prevent a similar death occurring in the future. In terms of the training and safety briefings, the coroner found that there should have been a site safety officer and dedicated safety briefings on the firearms instead of chats while handing out weapons.
Yes.
Yep. The armourer should have taken up the safety officer role when the film director did not choose one.
Right. Okay. Yep.
Test firing of the shotgun should have been done in a safe area at the same time as the two 9mm pistols were test fired, and this would have shown the danger in using the weapon.
Yeah, because even if you just aimed it at like a wall,
Yep.
when you see impact marks, you go, oh, no thank you. I will not have that shot at me.
Yep. The armourer was accountable for the decision to not do a test fire. However, if someone had insisted, a test fire of the shotgun probably would have been done.
Yeah.
The coroner also found that it was incorrectly assumed that the stuntman holding the shotgun could accurately aim while shooting from the hip.
Fair, but like, what are the chances that inaccurate aim was going to hit his chest versus any other area of the body? But he was meant to be aiming for the chest, right?
Well, he was aiming at him.
Yeah. But I feel like his lack of aim would have been more likely to actually have missed the individual than hit him.
Yeah.
But I would have thought from a camera angle, if you're filming from, like, say, the side or whatever, then it would be quite easy to manipulate what angle the gun was actually at. But it doesn't sound like they were telling him to not aim at the individual.
No, it doesn't seem like there were any instructions to that effect. The coroner noted that the film director and stunt coordinator were unimpressive witnesses.
Excellent. They're my favourite kind.
Yep. Because they tried to distance themselves from their duty to maintain a safe workplace.
See, that's the bit that I really hate. The people that don't just want to, like, find a way to make things better rather than sit
Don't
there
want to
being
take
like,
accountability for
Yeah,
anything.
I think they were essentially just being like, no, it was their responsibility. No, it was their responsibility.
I don't even like pointing the finger. I just want them to stand there and be like, yeah, mistakes were made. Let's learn from this. So not even pointing it on anyone and like throwing it to anyone, but rather just being like, okay, how do we fix this?
Yeah.
Yeah. I much prefer the witnesses that are on board with that.
Yep. The coroner liked a particular statement from the counsel for Johan's family, which they put verbatim into the inquest findings. The submissions of the director and stunt coordinator make clear that communication and consultation between the stunt coordinator, the director, and the armourer was absent. In essence, their approach was that each person adopt the risk for their own area of responsibility, without regard to how joint or concurrent risks were being addressed between areas of expertise. This disparate approach to safety, responsibility, and filming was one of the only areas of consistency between the evidence of the director and the stunt coordinator.
Oh, that's harsh and seems harsh but also fair.
But accurate.
Yeah.
The coroner found that the only rational solution is to make sure that a site safety officer is mandated. The safety officer would have overall control of any stunt production, including all the component film production departments, to make sure communication is adequate. So they wouldn't necessarily be the expert in all the fields, they're just there to make sure everyone talks to each other.
Yeah.
However, this would add additional cost to small production companies, and in the event of a disagreement, the theatrical armourer should have the final say.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The coroner then went into the regulation and standards of use of firearms in the entertainment, film and production industry. Stunt actors are regulated by the Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance, MEAA, which is also their union. It covers many different jobs in these industries, interestingly including professional basketball players.
What?
Yeah, no.
Well, you know how I randomly was on a plane once with the Harlem Globetrotters, and they're basketballers, but like it's very theatrical.
It's still a
Yeah.
professional sport, though. Do
Yeah,
they cover
I just
other
would have thought
sport?
they would be
Yeah,
a
but no,
sporting union.
I don't know if the Harlem Globetrotters
Are an American exhibition basketball team.
exhibition. There we go.
okay.
See, I am right. They're not like professional.
They
Yeah,
combine
gotcha.
athleticism, theatre,
Yeah.
entertainment, and comedy in their style of play.
Okay,
See?
so okay,
There you
that
go.
makes sense. Yeah, when I read that, I was like, "You what now?"
Yeah, so they're not like a professional.
Right.
It's more a theatrical. So that's where
Yeah,
my
right,
mind
okay.
went when
Yep.
you
Okay.
said that. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So that union also covers the more obvious makeup artists, sound engineers, venue staff, all those sort of people. Johan had been a member of the MEAA since September 2014. Screen Producers Australia, SPA, is an employer association body which represents the interests of small to medium-sized independent Australian film and television production companies. When Johan died, there were 3 documents that guided safety in the entertainment and screen production industry. The Film Industry Recommended Safety Code 1983 is the only fully endorsed standard approved by the MEAA and the SPA. It hadn't been updated or reviewed since its approval in August 1983
That's a
and
while
didn't
ago.
include any information on the role and responsibilities of armourers.
Okay. Because back in 83, they didn't have gun regulation.
Whoa. The real gun control came in what, 96? So it would have at least looked very different.
Yeah.
It probably was that you didn't need to have an armourer.
Yeah.
True.
The National Safety Guidelines for Occupational Risk Management in the Australian film and television industry were drafted in November 2004 with the intention of being industry national safety guidelines. After industry consultation, the Screen Production Review Committee did not reach an agreement to formally codify the draft guidelines.
Great.
So that means that they're used on many screen productions but are not legally binding
Yeah.
because they're still a draft. The Film and Television Industry Safety Guidance Notes 1995 cover more screen production areas than the 1983 Safety Code and provide advice on the use of firearms and armoury in screen productions. Regarding armourer responsibilities, the guidance notes state that the armourer must instruct relevant members of the cast and crew on the safe handling and safety procedures of all of the weapons to be used. Makes sense. They must also ensure that the weapons and ammunition are safe to use together and are of a good fit type, whether or not they are specially manufactured or obtained commercially.
Yeah.
The guidance notes state that live ammunition is defined as any cartridge loaded with explosive and a projectile, or projectiles of any cartridge loaded with a propelling charge and 1 or more projectiles. Dummy ammunition used in prop firearms should be proved to be safe to the safety supervisor and the first assistant director, and to any actors using the firearms or having them pointed in their direction.
Absolutely.
So again, that would be the test firing.
yeah. Yeah.
In terms of the handling of firearms, before the firing of any weapon, the armourer, first assistant director, key grip, and safety supervisor should plan for the protection of cast and crew essential for the shot, who must remain either in the line of fire or arc of fire. All other non-essential personnel shall be removed from the line of fire and arc of possible fire. If a weapon is to be fired in the close proximity of cast, the armourer, first assistant director, the safety supervisor, and those members of cast who may either be firing the weapon or being fired at, shall meet and agree upon the safe angles and distances to ensure safety.
Absolutely.
This will be dependent on the weapon, ammunition, distance, and the type of protection available for the participants.
Yeah, I was wondering, did it go into, like, could they have considered alternative protection for
We'll go
Johan
into
as
that a
well?
little bit.
Okay.
Yes is the short answer, but it's not often used.
Yeah, okay.
In response to Johan's death, there was a meeting between the MEAA, SPA, and other screen funding agencies to review the screen industry safety guidelines. The MEAA and SPA then jointly established Screen Safe Australia, and in consultation with armourers and other industry professionals, produced the National Guidelines for Screen Safety 2021.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, they were actually quite,
Yeah, nice.
I wouldn't say proactive, reactive in this case.
Yeah.
That as soon as this happened, they realised something needed to change.
Yeah, since the 80s.
Yeah, yes. Notification of the new guidelines was sent to all MEAA and SPA members. These guidelines provide advice on how to manage safety in screen industry workplaces and comply with relevant legislation and are additional to work health and safety laws.
Okay.
Chapter E of the National Guidelines relates to high-risk production activities, which includes the role of armourers and the use of firearms. Section 1 identifies who is considered the person conducting a business undertaking, the statutory test for a person caught by work health and safety obligations, and lists golden rules about the use of firearms and safety requirements. While this is not a legally enforceable document, the chapter creates a checklist of what should ideally occur in a production where firearms are going to be used, a breach of which could guide prosecutors.
Right, yeah, fair.
Yeah.
Johan's death highlighted the lack of regulation and compliance checks in terms of the licensing and auditing of theatrical armourers and the use of firearms in the film and production industry.
Yeah, should he have lost his licence because he wasn't fit to be practising anymore?
Yeah,
But I don't
quite
know how they're
possibly.
regulated.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's thought that since there are only a small number of professional full-time theatrical armourers operating in Australia, there aren't enough to form a guild or specific union
Yeah.
to then sort of regulate themselves.
Yeah.
Armourers, theatrical ordnance, and the use of firearms and blank-firing ammunition on a set or in a theatrical production is governed by individual state Weapons Act and explosive laws, which means that there are inconsistencies across the states and territories. The term theatrical armourer does not exist in Queensland legislation, which means that any person with an armourer's licence can advertise and be employed as a theatrical armourer.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Additionally, there's no established process, training, testing, or any industry vetting to qualify for an armourer's or theatrical ordnance licence.
Yeah, it sounded like he was just a word of mouth, had been hired before kind of thing, right?
No, he did have his armourer's licence, but that's essentially just you know how to use a weapon
And he knew how to manufacture them as well, right?
and like modify them, yeah.
Okay.
The SBA supported a submission that a national code of practice be established for the safe use of firearms on screen productions in Australia based on the firearms armoury section of the national guidelines.
Oh, okay, cool.
The coroner asked an expert armourer a few questions in relation to preventing a similar death. When asked whether the scene could have been filmed without the need to load the shotgun, the expert stated that there were a few alternatives to blank firing a shotgun. They could duplicate the visual and sound effect of the shotgun being fired in post-production. The sound cue for coordination of the actors could have been done by firing only a primer seated in an otherwise empty cartridge.
Yep.
A blank could have been safely fired off-screen, normally done using a smaller firearm.
Right, so that you're still
So you
getting
still
that
get the
sound effect.
Yeah, and
Yep.
they're still getting that sound cue to...
Yeah,
this
do
is-
the action. Yeah.
Or the cue is generated some other way that everyone can clearly hear, which is apparently a common choice.
So you just like fire a horn and then cut
Yeah,
that out
exactly.
later.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, okay.
The coroner asked whether it would be beneficial for actors to wear some form of ballistic vest or added protection when using firearms on set. The expert stated that in 40 years, he had only once taken a bulletproof vest to set for use by an actor.
Right.
This was for Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible 2.
Okay.
But after trying it on, Tom Cruise said that it was too restrictive
bulky,
and
yeah.
bulky to be worn under the costume.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair.
The expert also stated that if best practice safety provisions are used, protection is unnecessary. However, they do use Lexan shields and cloth padding to protect crew members who may come into the line of fire from unburnt powder or small pieces of the brass crimp from blanks.
Okay. But again, presumably those are not penetrating so deeply as
Yeah,
to
no, I
cause
think
a
they
fatal
just-
wound. They're just
yeah.
kind of like
They might
fly off
hit you,
shrapnel.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the coroner's recommendations were that the Queensland Government review the relevant provisions of the Weapons Act and Weapons Act regulations as it relates to the definition of blank fire munitions and their practical use in theatrical productions, the establishment of a section of the Queensland Police Service specific to review the role of theatrical armourers, defining their lawful rights and obligations, the serious penalties facing Weapons Act offenders, and introduce standards for qualification, including training and testing, in order to obtain a theatrical ordnance supplier, firearms dealer, and or armourer's licence. Making it absolutely clear that operable firearms and non-blank firing weapons cannot be used in theatrical performances. Another recommendation was that the Office of Industrial Relations consider creating a code of practice for armourers and the use of firearms in the film industry, which I mentioned earlier that the SPA was in support of.
Yeah.
And the final recommendation was that the Minister for Police liaise with his interstate counterparts to ensure that there is a consistent Australia-wide legislative code for theatrical armourers outlawing the use of operable firearms and non-blank firing weapons in theatrical performances.
Yeah, that would be ideal if they just don't take real guns.
Yeah,
on
like
set.
make them all replicas.
Yeah.
And then you don't have a
Or
problem.
modified like the handguns were.
Yeah.
Did you say, sorry, the recommendation was for the QPS to liaise?
Yeah, that
Minister
for me was
for
weird.
Police.
Oh, Minister for Police.
Okay, because I was like, that seems like a huge burden to put on the QPS.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
QPS
okay.
were like, they wanted the QPS to start regulating the armourer's licenses a bit more, like have training, have testing, that sort of thing.
That's fair. Intrastate, but
Yeah.
trying to corral all the states, I imagine, to try and get some consistent code. Wouldn't be fun to do at all, so I wouldn't be putting that on the QPS, but the minister makes sense.
The coroner concluded that Johann's death was entirely avoidable, was a result of criminal actions, and the armourer was primarily responsible.
Fair.
However, the coroner noted that the film director, producer, and stunt coordinator could not escape some criticism for their failures to appoint a safety officer with overall control of safety considerations, undertake dedicated firearm safety briefings, test fire the firearm to establish safe distances for the actors, realise aiming difficulties associated with firing from the hip, and consider more costly but safer production operations like CGI.
Yeah.
QPS did not charge the stunt coordinator, the film director, or the producer with a criminal offence related to the death of Johann. This was because the failure to ensure the lawful use of theatrical ordnance weapons was the armourer's. Investigators found that the armourer would likely have been prosecuted had he not passed away.
Yeah, that seems fair.
Yeah. He would have likely been charged with manslaughter, unlawful possession of a handgun and or unlawful supply of a handgun, and or breach of a workplace health and safety duty causing death. And it said here that was a charge that's under now repealed legislation.
Okay.
If convicted of any of these charges, the armourer would have likely received a lengthy prison sentence.
Yeah.
That's sad though, because it sounded like he's been in the industry for years. So would he have made that same mistake had he not been unwell?
Yeah.
Obviously, all acting in hypotheticals here, but if he was charged, but he still had the same condition that he had, that he was affected by opioids, that probably would have been a mitigating factor.
As to what sentence he
Exactly.
would have received and all that
because
kind of
he was
stuff.
not of sound mind
At the time.
So.
Yep.
So realistically, it's more well, then he should have known that he shouldn't have been
He just
working.
shouldn't have been
Yes.
working.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's tough because it is one of those high-risk occupations.
Yep. On the 27th of February 2018, the cartridge supplier pled guilty and was convicted of one charge of manufacturing explosives without authority and the unauthorised sale of explosives. And he was fined $2,500. He told the court that he would not have made the shotgun shells if he had any idea they would be used indoors or would be fired at anyone.
I think that's a bit of a cop-out.
No, that's bullshit. You should not have made them because you did not have a license to make them.
The Department of Justice and Attorney General issued a response to the coroner's findings. In relation to the Weapons Act and the Weapons Act regulations, it was noted that the Queensland Police Service had reviewed the relevant provisions and was satisfied that the existing provisions met the intent of the recommendation, since firearms that are capable of discharging a projectile are not blank fire firearms and cannot be used in theatrical productions under the current law.
So it just should never have been there in the first place.
Yeah, essentially
okay.
QPS are saying, no, everything's all
Oh, gee.
good as it is because it shouldn't have been there. But I do think the coroner had some merit when they're saying there should be more regulation of the licenses.
And I guess maybe then more education of what defines a firearm that can be taken to a set versus one that can't. Because clearly the armourer thought, or it appears, we don't actually have the armourer side of things, but it appears the armourer thought that that was a suitable piece to take to the production because it was only firing blanks, when in reality because it could fire blanks, it shouldn't have been there?
Well, I think you can fire blanks and it'd still be fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fact that it could fire a projectile.
Yeah.
In relation to the Code of Practice, the Minister for Industrial Relations responded that they had considered the recommendation and stated that the Code of Practice may be warranted where a gap in the regulatory framework is identified. However, the Workplace Health and Safety Act and Regulation already imposes primary duties on those responsible for managing or controlling workplaces to ensure the health and safety of workers and other persons, and that this framework is now supported by the National Guidelines for Screen Safety developed by ScreenSafe Australia. Therefore, the Office of Industrial Relations did not find it necessary to develop a code of practice.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess if the Screen Australia have improved things, then that helps. You kind of essentially trial that and then...
Yeah, if you end up needing something else.
If you go, actually, no, this is still unsafe, then go back to it.
Yeah.
As long as someone's monitoring and following up, do we think this is effective or not? But
yeah, who knows whether that's happening.
Yeah, and what's your definition?
Yeah.
No deaths. And it's like, well, yeah, but we've not had deaths before.
Yeah.
So, how long are you waiting?
In relation to the Minister for Police ensuring that there is a consistent Australia-wide legislative code, the response noted that the Minister for Police and Corrective Services attended the ministerial meeting on counter-terrorism and transnational serious and organised crime on the 18th of March 2022, and this issue was raised in that forum. It also noted that the Minister for Police will continue to liaise with his interstate counterparts on this matter. I don't know what raising the issue means. So, did they just mention it and they're like, cool,
it was an agenda item and they went,
Yeah.
okay, cool, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Yes, kind of sounds like it. So part of the reason I found this inquest so interesting is because of the trial of Alec Baldwin over the death of cinematographer Helena Hutchins on the set of the movie Rust. So she was killed by a live round that was fired from a prop revolver being used by Alec Baldwin.
And she wasn't the actor, right? She was behind the line of fire.
She was behind the camera.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know, she wasn't a camera operator, but she was sort of in that area behind the cameras. They were rehearsing.
Yeah.
And because they were rehearsing, there's no footage of the incident because they weren't filming at the time.
So if they were rehearsing, why did he even pull the trigger?
He says that he didn't pull the trigger.
Right.
So
It just went off by itself.
Yeah. So Alec Baldwin and the armourer on set were charged with 1 count each of involuntary manslaughter. The first assistant director agreed to plead guilty to the charge of the negligent use of a deadly weapon.
Yeah, didn't someone get decent prison time?
So the armourer was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter and
Yeah.
sentenced to 18 months in prison.
That's right.
Alec Baldwin pleaded not guilty, but the charges were actually
to trial.
dismissed over a Brady disclosure violation because the authorities withheld evidence from the defence about a set of bullets.
What a fucking technicality, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because
Annoys me a little bit.
Yeah,
And dismissed means they can't go back, right? Because they've got the...
yeah, double jeopardy. So yeah, just always found it crazy that we had that sort of death in Australia.
Yeah. Did it go into, by the way, the person who actually shot the shotgun? And they're...
Not really, apart from the fact that there was absolutely no blame.
No, but
on
on
them.
the impact that
Yeah,
has
it
on
didn't.
someone.
Yeah, no.
And that is horrendous.
He is going to have to live with that.
Yeah, and so I'm like, just an actor in a scene doing something that they thought was completely within the realms of fine.
Yeah, the armourer, the expert that's there is like, yeah, no, you're fine.
Well, it also said that no one noticed that he had been shot until he just didn't get
didn't
back
move.
up. No one
Yeah.
even reacted. No one even thought that there was chance of injury.
Yep.
They didn't immediately rush over being like, something's wrong.
Yep.
So yeah, that sounds pretty horrible for all people involved. And then all of the people that then got to watch the footage also doesn't sound particularly fun. Yeah. It's really interesting that it does sound like it came down to someone who wasn't necessarily, or who was potentially cognitively impaired when they prepared themselves for their high-risk activity.
Yep. They thought it was going to be fine.
Yeah.
It was not.
No.
Nope.
And potentially there was a bit of complacency there as well. If that armourer had been doing it for a really long time
Yeah.
and nothing had ever gone wrong like this, then, you just assume it's another day at work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if he'd used different bullets that were made differently by an actual licensed individual, that kind of stuff. And so But hence exactly why the test shot was absolutely necessary.
Yeah. Because even if, you were cognitively impaired and you packed the wrong shells,
Yeah.
the test firing would then show you,
That's wrong.
okay, this is actually not
good.
good. Let's take all of the cartridges out.
And start again.
And just pretend to fire it.
Yeah, well, that too. Let's just not.
Pull the trigger, but don't have anything in there to come out.
Solves the problem.
Yep.
But on a side note, I learnt that shotguns have 2 triggers.
Yeah, some of them, yeah.
Okay. That's new to me.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
All right, well, thanks.
Oh, thanks for joining us, everybody. We will catch you again next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.